Justin Trudeau failed spectacularly in his attempt to manipulate our electoral system for partisan advantage. His unstated goal was to change the way we have elected our members of parliament since Confederation by introducing ranked or preferential ballots. It was not until an hour after he declared the initiative dead in the water that he finally came clean about his preference. Since Liberals are currently the second choice of most Conservative and NDP voters, that system would have bolstered their chances of winning elections for as long as they're forecasting deficits, which is to say at least mid-century. The electoral reform gambit laid bare Liberal arrogance, cynicism, and opportunism, culminating in a betrayal of the public trust. Now that is quite a litany of abuses, but it is not exaggerated, as a review of the sordid story clearly reveals. It all started with Trudeau's imperious declaration that the 2015 election would be the last using first past the post. Although the promise was included in the Liberal election platform, it flew below the radar, with virtually no public debate. Indeed, there was no attempt to justify the change or an indication of what should replace the current system. The Liberals calculated that the promise would be attractive, and it probably was to those Canadians who cared. With nothing to guide them, people dwelt on their personal dissatisfaction about the way elections were conducted and their preferred alternatives. By avoiding a recommendation, Liberals clouded their objective of changing the system to advance their political prospects. After the election, the new Prime Minister resurfaced his campaign pledge, claiming he had secured a mandate to change our election system. In spite of an intense political honeymoon, opposition mounted immediately. Many objected strenuously to change something as fundamental to our democracy as the election of our MPs without prior public approval in a referendum. In fact, it was outrageous for Trudeau to try to get away with it. That outrage grew over the next year and a half. Then there was the problem that electoral reform is complex, and people have a wide variety of views, ranging from proportional representation, PR, to ranked ballots, to maintaining the status quo, to other alternatives. Academics got into the debate, some with convoluted and arcane analyses. The media weighed in as well. Of course, each political party had skin in the game. Indeed, for them, it was existential. PR was embraced by the Greens and the Bloc Québécois, since their seat totals would be bolstered significantly. PR would likely consign the Liberals to minority status in any election they win. The Conservative Party would need to broaden its appeal under a different system. The government tried to predetermine the results of a study by stacking the decks with a majority on the parliamentary committee. When that failed, the game was effectively over, even though the hapless Minister of Democratic Institutions went through a much ballyhooed but shambolic public consultation exercise that highlighted the lack of political and public consensus. As to the widely ridiculed, simplistic, and biased online survey, the less said, the better. The Liberal spin now is that it eventually dawned on the Prime Minister that there were negatives to PR, including the ability of fringe parties to have a big influence in a coalition government. Let's just say that it is rather doubtful that Trudeau had not previously considered that Italy and Israel have to deal with those problems every day. The potential divisiveness of a referendum is another reason cited for Trudeau's about-face. Much more likely, he wanted to avoid a referendum because he realized that his pet plan would be turned down. Finally, there was the need to clear the decks for negotiations with President Trump. In comparison, electoral reform does not score high in the concern of the public or the government. Reneging on this promise was the right decision. Still, commentators are debating whether it was a broken promise or a lie. Actually, it was both. Trudeau concealed and then misrepresented his real intention, which was to engage and engineer a change to a preferential ballot system. When that could not be achieved, the purpose of the entire exercise was gone, so he downgraded the effort and finally backtracked. The Prime Minister should never have put us through this deceptive and risky process. He is guilty of trying to bamboozle and bulldoze Canadians on a matter at the very core of our democracy. Fortunately, he failed in that attempt. What we are left with are groups of people who feel betrayed and a Prime Minister whose credibility has taken a major hit. This is Joe Oliver for The Rebel.